Hi, this is Andy Hunt of Practical Wellbeing. I'm the creator of the identity healing processes, and in this video I'd like to give you a brief introduction to these processes. The intention of this video is to show you how identity healing works and may be of interest to you if you're struggling with deep-seated emotional problems, and also if you're an EFT practitioner who'd like to add these processes to your toolbox. To explain this, I'm going to use an imaginary client I'm going to call Jane. This is just to simplify the explanation. If you look at Jane, she looks quite happy enough in this photograph, but in reality she had a bad childhood, a violent father and a withdrawn mother. If you're lucky enough to grow up in a good family, you'll find yourself being looked after, cared for, loved, soothed, given all the things you need to grow up into be a healthy, well-adjusted and happy adult. Unfortunately, some people are not lucky enough to grow up in that kind of environment, and Jane was one of those. If you could go back in time to look at her, we might see something like this. You can see she's struggling to cope. She has no power, there's nothing she can do about her family, she just has to live in it and adapt and survive. And one of the mechanisms for adapting and surviving is for us to create parts of ourselves to do a certain job, to keep us safe. And the first of those parts I'd like to look at is what I'll call the watcher. The watcher, or Jane's watcher, is always on the lookout for trouble. Very, very good at reading the emotional signs and danger signs in other people. She can read the emotions in her father and in her mother, and she'll know if trouble's coming. She'll have an early warning system. And if trouble's coming, she'll pass things on to the second part, which I'm going to call the hider. Now, because Jane is not able to leave home, she can't run away from this, she has to find some way of staying safe. And for her, the way to do that is to kind of hide or become invisible if there's trouble on the horizon. If she can stay away, she's less likely to get hurt. And another way in which she may be able to stop being hurt is actually to learn to keep the people around her happy. If the people around her are happy, her parents, then she's less likely to get in trouble, she's less likely to be hurt. So this makes quite a tricky situation for her. She has to do all these kind of things to stay safe. And not surprisingly, as soon as she has the opportunity, she leaves home and feels a tremendous amount of relief. She's out of that dangerous situation. Now she can be with good people who can be kind to her and look after her. But she thinks she's left her childhood behind, but unfortunately her childhood has not left her behind. Even though she's an adult, there are still these three parts at work: the watcher, the hider and the people pleaser. They're still working, they're still doing the things they learned how to do. So for example, in safe social situations, Jane finds herself scanning faces and body language, looking for signs of threat and danger. Even though if one part of her mind knows this is completely safe, there's something in her that's always on the lookout for danger. In other ways, it shows up if she's kind of present or in arguments or conflict. She has this really strong urge to disappear or run away or to make herself scarce, so there's not going to be any trouble for her. Even if there's no actual danger, this stuff still runs. And finally, she keeps finding herself looking after people, trying to keep them happy. Even if she doesn't want to, even if it's tiring, it's almost unconscious, she can't stop herself from doing it. And naturally, this is all very hard work for her, being an adult and have to do all this stuff. And she tries lots of things. She's tried yoga, she's tried meditation. She has a stack of self-help books by the side of her bed. She tries to work out what's going on and what she can do about it. She may have been to counselling. She may have done tapping, all sorts of things to try and resolve this. But what she's found is that nothing works. She may get temporary relief, but the patterns seem to come back. So the question is, how can she change those patterns? They seem to have a life of their own, and in fact they do have a life of their own. They were created to help her stay safe and to get through childhood. And even though she's out of childhood, those patterns keep on going. She could go to an EFT practitioner. And if she went to the EFT practitioner would focus on finding the memories of where all these parts came into being and to neutralize them. And this is a very effective approach. If you can find all those memories and neutralize them, that can make a really big difference. But identity healing uses tapping in a different way. Identity healing, we work with the struggling parts directly. We don't work with memories. So if you remember, adult Jane has these three parts: the watcher, the hider, and the people pleaser. So let's go to the watcher for a moment. If you were the watcher, what do you think you would think and feel? I think some of the things you might think and feel would be you'd always be on the alert. You'd always often feel scared and probably wouldn't feel safe very often. You keep your guard up because you have no idea when trouble's going to strike. You probably find this very tiring and you feel tense and tired all the time. And you probably wouldn't trust people. What you would love instead would be to feel safe and to feel looked after so you didn't have to do this. But unfortunately, you don't have that. That wasn't the situation you had. You learned how to cope by being on the lookout. And this process, this ability to cope, keeps working. It doesn't retire. Your safety is important and it will keep going. So in identity healing, we want to work with this part directly. So how do we do that? Well, the first part of the process is to soothe the younger self, this inner self that's doing the looking out, feeling tense and nervous. Of course, if we were working with a real child, you could do all the things you do with a child to soothe them. You can hugs and cuddles, reassurance, all those things. We don't have that available to us because we're working with a part of ourselves. But we can use tapping as a way of soothing the stress and distress that the younger self feels. And that might take a lot of tapping because there is probably a lot of stress and distress. Then once the stress has been released, we can give the younger self all the things they needed at their time but didn't have. So Jane had no choice but to do the best she could with what she had. But now we have the opportunity to give her the things she needed at the time. So for her, or for this part of herself, the watcher part of herself, that might be to feel safe, or to feel relaxed, or to feel cared for. Other parts might need different things, might be love, or courage, or peace. Each younger self has its own individual needs. And in this process, we give them everything they need, and those resources are taken in and blended in the soothed younger self. And this process creates deep changes in that younger self. Where once the younger self was unhappy and stressed, the new younger self is contented and relaxed. There's just one more step in this process. Although the younger self is soothed and resourced and feels good, they're still trapped at a young age. In this case, let's say it's a 6-year-old self, you still have a 6-year-old self, part of yourself. Now the job of a younger self in reality, the job of a child, is to grow up, to come through all the various stages of growth to become a mature adult. So the last part of this process is to invite the younger self themselves to grow up and become part of Jane's adult self. So after this process, Jane finds she's no longer on high alert. She feels safe in herself. But this is only the start. There's still the hider and the people pleaser to take care of. Each younger self is helped. Jane feels more and more whole and more adult and more resourceful and capable. Of course, for real people like you and me, it's more complicated. We probably have far more younger selves. We have complicated histories and lives, and these younger selves need to be soothed, resourced and integrated. So the process for a real person, a real client, is obviously a lot more complicated than what I've described just here. So I hope you found this presentation interesting, and if you want to know more, you can find out more at the Identity Healing website, identityhealing.com. If you're struggling with emotional issues and this presentation has resonated with you, you can go to the website to find a list of certified identity healing practitioners who may be able to help you. If you're an EFT practitioner and would like to find out more about this process with a view to adding it to your tapping toolkit, you can also find out more about the training at identityhealing.com. Thank you for listening. I hope you found this interesting. Take care and bye-bye for now.